at some of the top stories. US President Donald Trump has threatened to substantially raise tariffs on India over its purchases and alleged reselling of Russian oil. India has slammed the move as unjustified and unreasonable, stating the US had previously encouraged such imports. Israel will allow gradual controlled entry of goods into Gaza through local merchants to reduce reliance on international aid, according to Israel's Kogat agency. Hamas has offered to coordinate aid deliveries if Israel opens humanitarian corridors, while global monitors warn famine is unfolding in the enclave, even impacting hostages held by Hamas. Russia has launched air attack on the Ukrainian town of Lozova in Kharkiv region, injuring several people, including 2 children, according to local official Serhiy Zelensky. In this overnight strike, critical infrastructure, homes, and apartment buildings were damaged, according to Ukrainian authorities. China insists it has the final say in choosing the next Dalai Lama, rejecting the Nobel laureate's assertion that his reincarnation will be determined by his own institution and likely be outside of China. Gama Sidain, Deputy Secretary of the Chinese Communist Party Committee in Tibet, has said that the central government will use a domestic search and approvals process. Brazil's Supreme Court Justice Alexandre de Moraes ordered former President Jair Bolsonaro under house arrest in Brasilia on Monday for violating a social media ban during his trial for allegedly plotting a coup. Bolsonaro, who ruled from 2019 to 2022, is now barred from receiving visitors except lawyers and using mobile phones, with police seizing several devices from his phone. Colombian court has rejected former President Alvaro Uribe's request for temporary freedom, while he appeals his 12-year house arrest sentence. The 73-year-old, convicted of witness tampering and obstructing justice, is the first former leader of Colombia to be criminally sentenced. Greece will spend hundreds of millions of euros to bolster its domestic defense industry with 3 homegrown anti-drone systems, including the Centaurus, set to enter mass production in 2026, according to media reports. Hong Kong was pounded by its heaviest August rainfall since 1884, with over 350 millimeters, which is 13.8 inches, falling in a single day and triggering the city's 4th black weather alert in just 8 days. The torrential downpour forced the closure of hospitals, clinics, courts, and schools. Japan's top trade negotiator Ryosei Akazawa is set out for Washington this week. He aims to press for swift implementation of the auto tariff deal. Under the deal, U.S. tariffs on Japanese cars will fall from 27.5% to 15%, with other goods also seeing cuts from 25% to 15%. Akazawa insists Tokyo needs to executive order from President Donald Trump to formalize the cuts and avoid stacking multiple tariffs. Meanwhile, South Korea has pledged large-scale support to help companies cope with higher U.S. tariffs. The government launched a task force to roll out relief measures and support new export markets. Financial backing will also boost tech sectors like AI and semiconductors under a $350 billion investment framework. Let's listen in to what South Korea's finance minister had to say.
예전에 비해 기업 부담이 늘어난 것은 사실입니다. 정부는 현장을 직접 찾아 기업과 늘 소통하면서 피해 최소화하기 위한 방안을 계속 마련하겠습니다. 또한 조선을 포함한 3,500억 불 규모의 전략 산업 협력 패키지가 우리 기업들에게 새로운 사업 기회가 될 수 있도록 최선의 노력을 다하겠습니다.
And in Brazil, officials say the government will not retaliate immediately against steep U.S. tariffs. Instead, it will roll out a domestic relief package with export financing and credit lines to protect affected industries. Now we're joined by Dr. Satoru Nagao. He's a fellow at Hudson Institute, joins us live from Tokyo, Japan. Thank you, Dr. Satoru, for joining us today. Good to see you. Now, how crucial is Japan's push for the swift implementation of the auto tariff deal with the US, and what impact could the eventual tariff cuts have on Japan's automotive industry?
Indeed, this is a big impact. Japan and the United States has already agreed about the tariff, but that agreement lacked when will the US start to impose. That is a mistake, I believe, but at the same time uncertain. So most of the tariff will start in the August 7th. But about the car, uncertain when, simply we do not know. So that's why we need to decide when. Currently, the tariff imposing to the car export from Japan to United States is 27.5%. So it will be 15%. Japan's wish is as soon as possible, of course. But when is uncertain. So that's why we need to negotiate when. That's current situation. So he need to go to the United States and negotiate. Still negotiate hasn't completed because when is the matter. Well,
Yes.
that's the situation.
And now, what challenges do you foresee in the US achieving a quick resolution, especially with ongoing trade tensions with other countries?
Indeed, this is uncertain because they are too busy. They are dealing with many tariff-related matters at the same time, but number of the officials who can decide, who can control it is very limited. So they are working very hard, but at the same time, but this amount of the work is very big. So that's why this is a big problem. Indeed, when is uncertain now.
And now, Dr. Satoru, looking at South Korea and US, given the increasing focus on AI as well as semiconductors, could this initiative lead to closer economic ties between South Korea and the US?
Of course it will. And the AI is key to the future industry because AI is related with the brain. In the human body, which part is most influential? Of course, this is brain. So that's why the brain-related technology will change many other industries at the same time and most influential. So that's why the US and South Korea cooperate each other is important. Of course, US and Japan should cooperate, US and India should cooperate. So that is very important area. So we should cooperate and enhance and improve something good. But at the same time, anyway, the currently U.S. government has hard work, very tough work, because the amount of the work is big they need to deal with. So that's why when it will solve, it is uncertain.
Thank you, Dr. Satoru Nagao, for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now we move on. Australia's Foreign Minister Penny Wong has warned that there is a risk that there will be no Palestine left to recognize as Israel's war on Gaza continues and violence escalates in the occupied West Bank. While reiterating Australia's long-standing support for a two-state solution, Wong has said that recognition of Palestinian statehood is a matter of when, not if, but made no firm commitment. Her comments follow a massive protest in Sydney, where up to 300,000 people marched across the Harbour Bridge, demanding an end to the war. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, who has yet to speak directly with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, reaffirmed his support for peace, but faced calls from human rights groups to suspend arms trade and impose new sanctions. Now we are joined by Peter Baum. He's a foreign editor at Weekly Blitz, joins us live from London. Thank you, Peter, for joining us today. Good to see you. Now,
Good to see you.
Good, thank you. Now, given Australia's stance on two-state solution, how do you view Minister Penny Wong's comments on the risk of no Palestine left to recognize amid escalating violence in Gaza?
It's a meaningless statement, and Penny Wong, of all the foreign ministers globally, is not the sharpest pencil in the box, as we say in the UK. It would be interesting to know what her idea of a Palestinian state is, which areas it includes, whether it would be Gaza, the whole of Judea and Samaria, or the West Bank, and East Jerusalem. So a statement is designed, actually it doesn't even play to those pro-Palestinians in Australia. Don't forget, the Australian government is under severe pressure domestically to be supportive, overly supportive, of the Palestinian claims for land and the Palestinian cause. So it comes as no surprise that someone such as Foreign Minister Wong would make such a rather stupid, meaningless statement. The more interesting aspect is that the Trump administration clearly have given the Israeli government the go-ahead to clear out Hamas in its entirety if Hamas continues to stick to its non-negotiation stance and demand that Israel withdraw completely from Gaza, which isn't going to happen. So I'm afraid, going back to Foreign Minister Wong and her statement, it's rather an inane, meaningless statement and will have absolutely no impact on the world order.
And Peter, now also, could public opinion in Australia significantly influence future foreign policy decisions regarding the Israeli-Palestinian conflict?
Yes, the way the demographics are in Australia, and we're seeing this in a lot of Western societies, the anti-Jewish bloc, which comprises, or the anti-Jewish state bloc, I should say, which comprises of a huge and growing Muslim population, combined with those on the left of politics in Western cultures, will ensure that Israel will continue to be under severe pressure internationally, and I've no doubt that the pressure will continue. The only way out for Israel to relieve such pressure is probably a change of government. If Netanyahu, for whatever reason, resigns or is kicked out of office in elections or through ill health, and someone more let's say left-leaning comes to power, then I think Israel can probably challenge back the saturation, overwhelming weight of anti-Israel coverage that she's currently experiencing. The irony is, of course, that Penny Wong and all her Australian government colleagues are themselves living on land stolen from the indigenous peoples of Australia, and have just passed a referendum no more than 9 months ago, whereby the indigenous peoples were not given equal rights to others. So the contradiction is quite ironic and quite a paradox, in my opinion.
Yes, indeed. They do sit on a stolen land while talking and criticizing that. Thank you, Peter Baum. Thank you for joining us and sharing that insight. Now we move on to our next news. One person was killed and 10 people, including 2 children, were wounded in Russia's largest air attack on the Ukrainian town of Lozova since the war began, according to local officials. Ukraine's state rail operator said in a statement that the strike damaged the train station and other infrastructure in the town. A video shared by Ukraine's state railway also showed a damaged train and rubble covering a train platform. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has also said that Russia struck civilian infrastructure in Lozova with more than 25 drones. This comes after Ukraine's Air Force downed 29 of 46 drones launched by Russia across the country overnight, according to reports. Now we're joined by Professor Vasilin Popovsky. He's a professor and vice dean at Jindal Global Law School. Joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you, Professor, for joining us today. Good to see you. Now, what are the implications of these strikes for Ukraine's future negotiations and also Russia's future negotiation and potential of ceasefire talks?
Well, we see day and day again that Russia is striking civilians and killing children. Two children were injured in Kiev. Later in Kherson, we see other injuries and also killed civilians in Ukraine. Well, what does it mean? I repeat myself, I said this many times. Russia does not cooperate with any peace negotiations. Russia refused unconditional ceasefire from the very beginning. Since 6 months ago, President Trump proposed a ceasefire for 60 days, refused by Russia, accepted by Ukraine. So the peace negotiations are basically useless, mostly because Russia tries to kill civilians every day. Putin wakes up in the morning, and if the report is that there are another 2 or 3 children killed in Ukraine, that makes him cheerful. And that makes him happy for that day. How do you fight such an enemy? Impossible to talk. Russia delays and maneuvers and manipulates everything, not only in the last 6 months, but in the last 3.5 years. Absolutely impossible to talk to Russian government anymore. In this situation, the options are heavy sanctions from everybody, not only from Western countries. The entire world, India including, should impose sanctions on Russia, stop buying oil and gas from Russia, and make Vladimir Putin surrender. There is no other outcome here. In the meantime, obviously, it's very important to support Ukraine, to give Ukraine all the help, including military, that is necessary to defend its civilians.
And Professor Vasilin, now, earlier we heard the news that Netanyahu has given an option or has offered to mediate talks between Russia and Ukraine for U.S. So given Israel's complex geopolitical position, how could Netanyahu leverage his relationship with both Moscow and Washington? Can this, Israel being in middle, can it achieve a meaningful breakthrough, according to you?
I don't expect anything from this. As I said, that is absolutely useless to talk to Putin. Many people tried. Netanyahu tried several years ago. Everybody tried. Erdogan is trying this for 3.5 years. Donald Trump is trying. Every European meeting has also a message to Vladimir Putin. Including China, everybody in the world has tried to talk to Vladimir Putin for 3.5 years. I don't expect Netanyahu to make absolutely any difference if he attempts to talk to Russians. Russia needs to be under sanction. They should be treated basically like the Nazi Germany leaders in 1944, 1945. Absolutely no negotiations, heavy sanctions, and military help to Ukraine. I don't expect anything from any negotiations with this government in Russia. Well, unless the President Putin dies and there is a new government, then yes, we can start the negotiations with the new president of the Russian Federation.
Thank you, Professor Vasilin Popovsky, for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. met Prime Minister Narendra Modi in New Delhi today. The two leaders held high-level talks at Hyderabad House, with President Draupadi Murmu also in attendance. The meeting comes on day 2 of Marcos' 5-day visit to India. He was received on arrival by India's Minister of State for External Affairs, V. Muralidharan. According to India's Foreign Ministry, both sides are holding wide-ranging discussions to boost cooperation in defense, agriculture, pharmaceuticals, as well as maritime security. A key highlight of the visit is defense. Just weeks after the Indian and Philippine navies held their first joint drills in the South China Sea, The visit marks a strategic move as the Philippines seeks to strengthen regional alliances and protect its maritime claims in disputed waters. Now we go back to our guest discussion with Professor Veselin Popovsky. Thank you, Professor, for staying with us. Now, given the ongoing tensions in the South China Sea, how could these defense collaborations between India and Philippines shift the regional security dynamics? Also, could this deeper defense cooperation with India provoke China?
Well, India is doing the right thing. They're helping the Philippines here very strongly, and I really admire and appreciate that. That should continue. The Philippines are vulnerable and in jeopardy in the South China Sea. They need that support, and not only from India, by the way, from many other countries, and many countries also support Philippines in these terms, including with military defense systems. So I encourage that to continue. I'm very happy to see that development during the meetings by the President Marcos with the Prime Minister Modi in Delhi. And it's significant. Now, on your second question about China, yes, obviously there will be some reaction in Beijing. The government, China, will not be happy with that. But India is doing the right thing, and it should not worry any development which China can do in the South Sea will definitely justify what India is doing. So a very good step. It's not only, by the way, India, as I mentioned, a coalition of states is helping the Philippines to defend its territory in South Sea, and it's the most vulnerable country there. Obviously, China should not be a big factor of concern for India when it developed its relationship with the Philippines. That's how I think.
And Professor, now how might this shift regional security dynamics, particularly in maritime security and countering China's influence?
Yes, you're right that the region is very important, and we can think of that region a bit broadly as a Indo-Pacific region. There are many countries, hundreds of countries are there, including small islands, and they will also have been concerned with the Chinese aggressive action in South China Sea. But again, as I said, the big majority of countries will align their efforts. China is acting in a sort of isolation. Maybe only North Korea supports China in all of this, nobody else in the Indo-Pacific region. The ASEAN countries are united in supporting their own members, Philippines, Vietnam, and other countries. So going bigger than just Philippines, I think the region also will respond accordingly to constrain any Chinese aggressive action in the South Sea of China.
And Professor, following up on that answer, what role can India play in strengthening the Philippines' position within frameworks like ASEAN?
Yes, India has very good relationship with ASEAN, by the way, with all 10 countries, bilaterally, but also collectively as a regional organization as such. And I can only admire what India does with its relationship with ASEAN, including, as you mentioned, the military and defense collaboration with those countries. And India simply needs to continue its constructive role, engaging ASEAN, engaging other forums. There is not only ASEAN, but also Quad, which includes Japan and Australia. And in all those multilateral Asian forums, India is the biggest country in the world, not only the biggest country in the Asian region. So India is a crucially important player in everything that concerns Asia broadly, but specifically what concern defense and military issues in Asia.
With that, thank you very much, Professor Veselin Popovsky, for always joining us and sharing your insight throughout our news. Now we move on to our next news. On August 4, 2025, Sean Diddy Combs lost his bid for pre-sentencing release. This comes after the U.S. District Judge Arun Subramanian denied his request for bail and ordered him to remain jailed until his October 3rd sentencing. Initially, Combs' legal team had requested release on a $50 million bond, citing allegedly unsafe conditions at Brooklyn's Metropolitan Detention Center. They also appealed that other defendants who faced similar charges as Diddy were usually freed before sentencing. But the judge said the record includes evidence of violence, coercion, and subjugation, making him a danger to the community. Prosecutors also argued that detention center conditions have since improved. As of the hip-hop mogul star Combs, he was convicted on 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution at his July trial, while being acquitted of sex trafficking and racketeering conspiracy charges. Each prostitution charge carries a potential 10-year prison term, though sentencing guidelines suggest a likely total of around 5.25 years. He has been detained since his arrest in September 2024 at the MDC in Brooklyn. Now we're joined by Joshua Barnes. He's anchor and correspondent at NewsX World. Joshua, what more can you tell us about Diddy's case?
Well, yes, absolutely, Asuma. Of course, the Sean Diddy Combs case has encapsulated a lot of conversation, and it's been a key talking point in the United States and across the globe. Of course, Diddy's prevalence in the music industry, but also a case which has been blown wide open with lots of reports globally and a lot of allegations that ultimately have ended in 2 charges relating to transportation of people for prostitution. Now, the 2 charges at play are less severe than the other racketeering charges that Diddy was facing, but sentencing is expected at the start of October. Diddy's lawyers have been throughout this process, throughout the legal process, been looking for bail. $50 million was the figure that they suggested being put forward for Diddy to be released on bail as the trial was coming up, and now he is awaiting sentencing. But that has not been granted. Questions have been raised about Diddy's influence. Of course, there were questions raised earlier on about whether there would be witness tampering. Of course, those claims made by the prosecution. But the situation has moved on now. Sentencing is coming at the start of October, and a jail sentence could be put down. So it's interesting to see. It's a conversation that will continue. Whether further requests for bail will be made, we will wait to see. But of course, all eyes will head towards October the 3rd, where